Welcome to Season 3 of the Old Nerd in the Gym Fitness Podcast. We are all about supporting the health and fitness of family caregivers and anyone else who wants to live better and stronger physically and emotionally. This program is a public service media production of GLD Enterprises Communications Limited, with our thanks to our guests and other sponsors who support our mission of improved health. You can learn more and send us your questions or comments by visiting our website, oldnerdinthegym.com. or follow us on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter at Old Nerd Fitness. Now let's get started with this episode of Old Nerd in the Gym Fitness Podcast with your hosts Julie Barth and Gery Deer. Okay, thanks for joining us and welcome to the Old Nerd in the Gym Fitness Podcast. This is Gery Deer and I'm here with Julie Barth.
Hi, Gery.
You're here like we were used to not doing this for a little while, so
yeah, it's been a minute since we did an Old Nerd.
Yeah, so we're
a different format than our other podcasts.
We're coming back in after several months, and part of that is because of logistics, and part of it is because of we're doing some reformatting, and we're back in today for our first episode of Season 3.
And we're in a new location.
We are in a new location. We're at the DATV Studios downtown Dayton, and we'll have some information about that on the website if you want to take a look at them. It's a nice space here. They have a lot of cool stuff to use.
They have a lot
playing
of
with other toys.
Fun equipment that I'm enjoying.
Yeah, you'll get to see the video part of this one, which we don't do very often.
Getting tech nerd equipment envy.
It's a little bit crazy. So yeah, so we're talking about today. We're going to be focusing on the COVID-19 vaccine, and we know that is a very decisive and divisive problem right now. Right?
Yes.
You're either on one camp or the other. It seems like.
I would think.
And we have a lot of different things that we're doing about the getting people out, getting them vaccinated, trying to get rid of some of the misinformation that's out there.
Yes.
And what have you?
I keep thinking about what was it? Mulder and Scully. The truth is out there.
Yeah.
That just seems so appropriate right now.
It does really. It's out there somewhere.
The mistruth is out there everywhere. That's not good.
Well, and that's a really good point, because one of the things we're going to try to focus on today is we know that there's a political side of this thing. We're going to steer clear of that. And one of the things I want to make sure that we understand that there is a very big difference between, I've said this on this podcast and others before and in some of their content, that there's a big difference between truth and fact.
Mm-hmm.
And we're going to focus on fact, not truth. Truth is entirely subjective.
Right.
So we're going to not be talking about truth. We're going to be talking about science and fact, and our guests who are introduced.
Political rhetoric to some other podcast.
We'll leave that for somebody else.
For us.
We don't do that. So you may not, if you are from a particular camp, you may not like what we say because it is based in fact. If you're in another particular camp, you may not like what we say because, well, it's based in fact.
If you don't believe in science, then stop listening now.
Science is not something you need to believe in. That's what I like about it. Science is pretty definitive. So once you've worked it all out, it works out pretty well. So, but we have a lot of things going on today. So I just wanted to point out, first, I want to welcome, do we do it doctor or MD at the end? We just say it.
I think just Leann is perfectly fine.
Leann Poston, and she's going to be introducing herself in a minute. Thank you for joining us today.
Thank you for inviting me.
She's going to be giving you a little background on herself here in just a second, but I'm going to just start out with a couple of statistics like we always do on Old Nerd. And
no dad jokes today?
I don't have any dad jokes.
There aren't really that many funny COVID-19 vaccine jokes, are there?
Guess what happens if you don't get one? You could die. See, it's just not
hilarious.
As funny as anything else.
Yeah, it doesn't really work.
So we don't want to do that. But I was just looking at, so I should let everybody know, we are recording this on August the 3rd, right? This is August 3rd of 2021.
The day before the best day ever.
It's your birthday, we know. So you can ignore that, or you can send, gift cards or whatever. Make sure you use my email address. But I wanted PayPal. So I wanted to let you know, I'm just kind of going through this on today's date, according to the CDC. Now, Leann and I were talking about
August 3rd, 2021, maybe it should be specific.
I did say that. Okay. 2021. And Leann and I spoke a minute ago before we got started about what some of the best locations for information are. And we both agree, start with the CDC. Second would be talking to your own doctor, most likely.
Absolutely. If you have questions, that's the place to
start going. And we'll deal with more of that here in a few minutes. So I'm just going to start with the CDC, and we're going to look at a couple of pieces of information. So this is their official page. That's the CDC's COVID data tracker, and they have just about everything you can imagine on here. They talk about The cases in the last 30 days. They talk about the number of vaccine doses delivered. They talk about deaths per capita. Everything is on here. And this is statistical fact. This is what they're keeping track of. And so we're going to look at the first thing, according to this, on this date, according to the CDC, 164.9 million people are fully vaccinated. I don't know what the entire population of the country is.
That's in the United States, right?
That's in the U.S.
Okay.
Yeah, these are all U.S. stats. Only 57.8% of the entire country, just a little over half, have been at least one dose.
Right. And that's one thing that I think gets a lot of misconception, because some of the statistics are for the entire country.
Yeah.
And some of them are for people who are eligible for vaccination.
Right. So
that
this is
brings
the
up a little-
entire number.
Right. So that includes the people, children under age 12 who are not eligible for vaccination.
So if we use the word, well, and this actually, yeah, and you got to be clear, because this does say at least one dose, which means we're assuming they are eligible because they got the dose.
Okay.
So that is 57.8% of people who have had at least one dose based on the entire population. The less than or equal to population, greater than or equal to 12 years of age, which is the minimum, right?
That is correct.
12 years at this point.
There are approved vaccines for age 12 and over right now.
Okay, and I think the only one that isn't is Johnson & Johnson, if I'm not mistaken.
I believe that is the case also.
I think that's correct. And you should, again, ask your doctor. They will tell you. But this one says the percentage of population 12 and older, at least 12 years old, 67.6% have received at least one dose.
Right.
So we're starting in the right direction, at least.
Right. The goal is
late.
to be 70% last month, correct?
Right. And that was 4th of July, is what President Biden said, right?
That was his goal, yes.
That was his goal.
Are they going for 70% of people eligible, right? Not 70%
Yes,
of the
that's correct.
population, because obviously we can't do anything about kids 12 and under. at the
Right,
moment.
and that's the thing. We have to consider this from eligibility.
Right.
We don't think about it as the entire population, but that's how some of the math is working. So
Yeah.
you have to be sure what the data is you're looking at.
And also when you're comparing our data with other countries, because that brought up a lot of discussion earlier in the year when Great Britain comparing their data to ours.
Right.
True.
They were
That's true.
using eligible and we were using total population. So we looked like we were significantly
So
behind.
all of that
Right.
math looks really weird if you don't know what the origin of it is.
That is
So
correct.
Be
What
very
units?
specific about what statistic you're looking at.
If you're
Not
looking
just
at
the number.
if you're looking at miles versus kilometers, feels like a lot further, you know.
Well, and it also leads to misinformation because
Yes.
people will bring up two different numbers and think,
Exactly.
well, how can they both be correct?
Right.
And
I love to do my weight in kilograms. It's
Wouldn't it be a lot bigger?
Or on them. No, it's like 30.
Oh, it's smaller. Okay, I see. All right. I was thinking grams for some reason. Okay,
Or
let's
on
do
the
it.
moon.
Let's do it in
If
grams.
anybody else?
It's 1/6. So, so we have the next piece of this. Just going to read one more of these. Let's see. We have, according to this, 400,674,965 doses have been delivered. That's distributed.
Well, that's impressive that you even read that number.
It's the next one is even more impressive. Administered. This is how many have been given out. 346,924,345.
Wow.
So it is roughly 50 million more have been delivered than have actually been administered. So there's still a lot out there that
Yes.
hasn't even been used yet. And that's
that was a concern I heard on a radio article the other day, was that some countries the people are not coming to get the vaccines and they're expiring, or they can't be used anymore.
they're getting
It ends
used
up being
up.
wasted, unfortunately, when people are not using them.
And a lot they're perishable.
Mm-hmm.
So you've got this whole thing. All right. So the last thing I'm going to point out here, and this is not on their page, this is something that happened this morning. Again, this is August 3rd, 2021. And there was a news story that came across, and unfortunately, there aren't a lot of details about this. You can look this up on your own. But New York City is now, as of this morning, requiring vaccination proof for indoor dining and fitness centers. So they're worried about it enough that it spiked back up. And
Right.
here in Greene County, Ohio, which is where we are based, we're in Montgomery County right now, but in Greene County, it is growing.
Yes.
We're seeing more cases of COVID, and
my sister lives in Florida, and they're back in the red again now.
That
so
is
that's
just
a high risk state now.
crazy down there. What's
Yeah.
going on?
I don't know. I don't know if it has to do with the transient.
Well,
I think the tourism probably has a lot to do with transmission down there, because there's so many people that are there from another place.
right? Everybody
And
goes to
coming into-
Florida.
and coming into contact with other people who live there, and then they're leaving, and they're bringing their germs with them.
And organizations like Disney have now started requiring masks again.
Good.
Inside the park.
Because that's a lot of people in one day.
That is a lot of people in one day.
Think
Not the happiest place in the world.
How many people Mickey Mouse has to rub up against every day?
I think Mickey is glad to be in the costume.
Yeah.
Is what I'm thinking.
You've got a mask on under that?
I would. I mean, the number of kids.
How many layers of...
Those costumes are heavy.
How many layers of fluff can you put between you and the
That's a lot of
small children?
It's a lot of fluff.
Little germ pots is what we used to call children when I worked
in daycare.
Little
germ pots?
I worked in daycare. That's what we called them.
Okay. It's kind of interesting because I've just got the iPad in front of me here and I'm just going through a couple of these stories and it just never ceases to amaze me how this is working. So before I go any further, we're going to get into the meat of this thing now. And remember the goal of Old Nerd. Our whole purpose is to provide you with information and help you deal with the health and wellness of your everyday thing. And again, we're focused a lot on caregivers because especially in this situation, caregivers are very much at risk because they could bring it to the person they're in charge of. And that was my situation a year ago when I was taking care of my dad.
Just doing your daily activities of going to the pharmacy and taking care of the person you're going out and being in the world and then coming and bringing them back home.
Now, when I was caring for Dad before he passed away, we were in complete lockdown through that time. Even his funeral was difficult.
And you were able to get pharmacy delivered and that sort of thing. So we didn't have to go out as much.
Yes. So, but he did not leave the house. No. I mean, unless we had to. And I could take him outside and do things because we have a fairly decent piece of property. So I could get him outside. But there was still this problem. And if you're taking care of somebody, this is something that definitely, I think this is something that definitely has a problem on both sides of this thing. I actually figured something out here.
The microphone's backwards.
It's backwards. Somebody put it in the...
Oh, I wonder if mine is.
No, yours is good. This one is not. So please stand by.
Please stand by while we spin the microphone.
Are we going to spin the microphone?
I don't know.
I don't know if that's going to work because it's definitely on that side.
Would you like me to stop so that you can do that?
Now let me just move it around. How about... Is that better? No, that's worse.
I think it was right.
Maybe it is. I don't know. Something's weird.
In your head.
Love technology.
It's not your microphone.
It's not my microphone. I'm not comfortable with somebody else's. So for right now,
it's like sleeping in a hotel bed. It's perfectly nice, but it's not yours.
It's not mine. So right now, I'm going to turn it over to Leann. Give us a little bit. I want the folks listening to have a good understanding of your background, so they understand that you had some experience with pediatrics and all these areas that are kind of a hot button right now, right? So give us a little about your background.
Right. I attended medical school at Boonshaw Medical School here in Dayton and did my residency in pediatrics and practiced in the local area for about 11 or 12 years. After that, I transitioned over to teaching because I guess the best way to sum it up is I'm a trained pediatrician, but education is my choice.
Okay.
And that's where my focus has been. I taught for about 12 years, really learned a lot about how kids think and adolescents think and their concerns. And that's been very useful over this last year because a lot of the articles I've been asked to write and to discuss are weighing the risk and benefits for children, as far as being in the classroom and the drawbacks of not being in the classroom. I also have a master's in education in educational technology. So I'm very familiar with online teaching and how to do online teaching. And then the medical risk. You would have
been very helpful the last year.
I have. I've actually
been super busy.
Contributed to about 300 articles on COVID.
That's almost one every day.
It is. Well, that's all I do all day is write. So that's pretty much familiar. It.
So in your experience, and obviously none of us have really run into anything like this before, but there are parents who are, and I'm going to just preface this that we're going to talk for a minute about kids because we're about to go into the fall school season and schools are open again.
Yes, they are.
And so even I remember people growing up that, I was a child of the 60s. So when I came into the 70s is when I remember things. And I remember that there were parents who were reluctant to get their kids vaccinated for the regular stuff that we had to have, like the rubella and the measles and all that stuff. And I remember they were seen as sort of wackos. They were just like, you're a weirdo, get out. You can't come in here.
It was an outlier thing.
It was an outlier thing. And it was a fear of medicine. It was a fear of whatever. It was the stout. Who knows? And we don't know what they were thinking. But it's now,
the natural homeopathic kind of thing that came about in the 70s.
Well, it was partly that, but partly it was fear. Mm-hmm. There was a lot of fear. And we have a lot of fear now.
Right. And I think a part of that is because people don't understand exactly what vaccines are and how they work.
Right.
When there's several different forms of vaccines. You can inject, live viruses. You can inject recombinant ones. You can inject pieces of DNA. I mean, there's a bunch of different things that you can inject. And that sounds a little scary that you're putting things directly into your system that you really aren't having a whole lot of control over.
Right.
So let's talk about the science behind this particular vaccine then,
Sure.
because a lot of people are misunderstanding it as with other ones where you have a viral vaccine often puts the virus into your body. This is an mRNA vaccine, which does not do that.
That is absolutely true. What the mRNA vaccine is, it is a two components to it is all. It has a lipid outer coat to it. It's called a liposome. And the reason that it has that is because all of your cell membranes are made of lipids. And the only way to get the contents of the vaccine into your cell is to have it be in the lipids. Kind of like that like dissolves like feeling,
Right.
Where if it's in water, it's not going to get into your cell.
Got it.
That's the reason for that. Inside of that lipid coating is a piece of messenger RNA. Now, the COVID, and that's one of the misconceptions people have. They think that the entire virus genetic sequence is inside that vaccine, and it's not. It is a very small part of the sequence just for the spike protein.
And that's to get it to attach to the
Right.
the
The
virus,
spike
in other
protein
words.
is the part that attaches to what's called the ACE receptor, and that's the receptor that's in you that the virus binds to. So the thought is this, that if you have a sequence of the mRNA for the spike protein and you put it in this lipid coating and then you inject it into your muscle, then that lipid coating will help that messenger RNA get into a muscle cell. And once it's in the muscle cell, your cell's machinery is going to start making that protein, that spike protein. And then the cell, what it does, and with all your proteins, is it puts a little piece of that protein out on the outside of your cell, kind of like a flag, and says, there's a foreign protein inside me, just to let you know, immune system, so you can recognize it. Then your immune system comes by and it sees that foreign protein and it starts making cells, and it makes what are called T lymphocytes and B lymphocytes. T lymphocytes are your fighting cells. They destroy other cells that are contaminated. And B cells, what they do is they make antibody. And you make both of those, T cells and B cells, against that spike protein. And you have a special subpopulation of them called memory B cells and memory T cells, and they stick around for a while. And then the next time you get exposed to that spike protein attached to a COVID virus, those B cells and T cells start multiplying very quickly and are ready to fight. And that's why you may get a little bit of symptom, but you're not going to get the full-blown illness.
Is it also, that has a little to do with why you get some of the symptoms after the second dose too, right?
It is, because what's going on is because you have that foreign flag out there, that spike protein, and your immune system is saying, hey, that cell, something's wrong with it.
Right.
It's got a foreign protein in it. We got to get rid of it.
So it's like the flags on Minesweeper. You put one of those little red ones up.
Yeah.
And be like, watch out for this cell.
Exactly. And then you have what are called cytotoxic T cells. It's an impressive name. They're kind of like Pac-Man. And what they do is they come by and they destroy those infected cells.
So that's pretty complicated for the average person to gather. So throwing that out on the evening news really wouldn't have meant much, would it?
No, and so people tend to simplify it. And when you simplify information, of course, you're going to lose some of the detail. And I think that's where a few things happen. First of all, people get the idea that the entire DNA sequence is in this vaccine. And first of all, it's not DNA, it's RNA.
It's RNA.
And RNA is constantly being made and broken down in all of your cells, not just the spike protein. The second misconception people have is that RNA is going to get incorporated into your DNA and change it forever. That's not going to happen because RNA doesn't get incorporated into DNA. RNA is separate. RNA is a different kind of genetic material. And then another misconception people have is that when you hear that the vaccine is 95% effective or 90% effective, they think that that's a failure on the part of the vaccine.
Mm-hmm.
It's not due to the vaccine. It's due to your immune system.
Also, no vaccine is 100% effective.
No.
It's just not possible, is it?
And why is it not possible? Because your DNA is different than my DNA.
Right.
And I may have a genetic sequence that codes for T cells and B cells that make better memory cells against that particular protein than you do.
So an individual person's immune system would affect the effectiveness.
Absolutely. And that is what determines the effectiveness of it.
Some of us are better at these things than others.
Well, we all have things that we're better at. You've a good example is you've heard about how you can have a genetic change or a genetic variant that protects some people from HIV/AIDS.
And that's certainly not everybody.
Oh gosh, it's
otherwise it wouldn't have been an epidemic of its own.
And a really good example of this was a story that, or a case in England, and don't quote me on the origin, because I'm trying to remember details from a long time ago. But a child needed a bone marrow transplant. Actually, it was an adult. He needed a bone marrow transplant after cancer, and he had HIV, and they actually got the bone marrow from a person who happened to have this genetic change that protected him from HIV. And he was cured from his cancer and his HIV at the same time.
Wow.
Well, that's a happy day for that fella. Huh?
It was, but
it comes out and he's like, I got all kinds of things not wrong
everything's
with
fixed.
me now.
That's great.
Right. But it's a really good example of how all of our genetics affect how, first of all, how we're going to experience COVID if we get infected with
And it's
it.
all very random. We don't know what our DNA. I mean, who's going to go in and check that? I mean, you'd have to have a reason to, right? Even if you could.
Well, there's a lot of genetic testing that you can get done nowadays.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, you can find out all kinds of things about yourself with genetic testing.
That's probably going to be a whole other
you
nerd
can get
episode.
the markers for all of those things that you might be susceptible
and that's the
for.
thing, that I think we're all susceptible to something. At which part do we stop chopping things off?
Well, I would like to have that done for my son, because I don't know his father's side of the family well, and I don't necessarily
no idea what's going on.
Trust that I'm getting the right information. That all these things that he could be susceptible to, because I don't know that side. That's a whole half of his genes that I'm not familiar with.
So when it comes to and I should point out, I mean, we've got people in our family that refuse to take the virus vaccination for the virus, and we made sure that Julie's son got it, because he's starting school in the fall, and he's very scientific. He's 15. He's all about it.
Got it done the week
as
after
soon as they allowed
it was available, or the week of, because I was going to see my brother in Florida, and he has my brother-in-law is immunosuppressed. He has myasthenia gravis, so he has a lot of immune issues, and we were not going to be able to visit with my son if he wasn't vaccinated.
And a lot of our, we're talking about a lot of immune issues and things like that associated with this, but pretty much everybody can get this thing. And, I mean, it's not really something that we have a lot of immunity to in the first place, which is why it's such a problem.
Right. And that's a good point, because we talk about influenza, and when I just did a recent talk on the difference between influenza and COVID, because I think people think that COVID is so very different. It is very different. And the reason is because every time you've gotten the flu in the past, the genetic sequence for that particular flu virus or strain had a large overlap with a previous one you had.
Right.
So you had a little bit of immunity.
And your body remembers that.
You may just not get as sick in the same ways.
It's like internet cookies on the web. The computer remembers you've been there before.
It's the body's
and
internet
your body
cookies.
remembers you've been there before.
Let's dumb this down even further. So therein, what you just said is part of the problem.
Yeah.
Because you took this one piece that she just said, and I realize we're playing with this, but you took this one piece of information that she said and broke it up and separated it from context and gave it this new meaning.
Right.
And that's what's happening.
And then people latch onto that one little thing that is not in context anymore.
Yeah, we don't know.
Well, and importantly, it is important what you just said, because you made it an internet cookie.
Right.
And those can be around forever, right?
They can.
And so people are expecting the vaccines to induce the memory B cells and memory T cells, and for them to last forever. And they don't.
That's an interesting point, because the other stat that I read this morning was from a study done on Pfizer's vaccine, that it is only effective for about 4 months. And at that point, it starts losing up to 70% of its effectiveness, which is why one of them, I forget if it was Pfizer or Mrna, was trying to get the government to let them do a booster after 6 months. I think it was. I don't know what the number is or what they've decided on, but.
Right. And when they do the vaccine testing, they follow the antibodies for people who have gotten the vaccine that were in the clinical trial. And they watch and see when those antibody levels start to decline. Right. And that's how they make that judgment that your memory B cells and memory T cells are not producing as much antibody, and therefore the vaccine is not as effective. Right. So it really, once again, has nothing to do with the vaccine. It has everything to do with your immune system.
It's all about the people again.
And losing its effectiveness. Now, would all of us lose our memory B cells and T cells at the same rate? No. And so And some of us never developed memory B cells and memory T cells, and we're going to be what's considered a vaccine failure.
Well,
in
so
that
let's
5%.
throw in all the other variables of age, gender,
Mhm.
blah,
Right.
blah, origin, like what our history is like from our families going back 1,000 years didn't have whatever
Well,
this is,
And
right?
age is a really big one because it's a phenomenon called senescence. Your immune system naturally declines with age.
Right.
Right.
You know, and
Which
that's
is why we're so careful with our seniors. And
Mhm.
and that's why the vaccines were given first to the
To the
oldest
seniors, right.
populations. Yeah, because they were at highest risk because we knew their immune system wouldn't work as well.
And one of the things one of the old nerds we did originally when the vaccine was going on and it had just started, one of the things we talked about was they didn't do this. And I feel like looking forward, if we have another issue of this, I feel like they should, I don't know if it's government or who decides that stuff, but who gets the vaccine, because again, we're focused on thinking about how the caregivers are dealing with. They should immunize the senior and the caregiver at the same time for the same reasons. Because if I had to go out and I came back and my father was potentially,
Yeah.
if any one of us who was in our little pod had to go out and come away and have to be in charge
Right.
of him, we could give him that buck.
Mhm.
So we should all be.
But where does that stop? Are you going to do the whole pod, and then that's going to ripple out?
Well, no, but I
it's
think
gotta-
at least
gotta be very specific.
at least the primary caregivers should be. It's like I don't understand the concept of not requiring healthcare workers to have this shot because
Yeah,
it
that
makes no
seems insane
sense.
to me.
It's just the math in my head doesn't work.
Well, especially because a lot of hospitals in the past have required the flu vaccine.
Right.
You couldn't work there if you didn't. Get
Yeah,
the
how
flu.
is it any different than that? Than
It
an
really
employer
isn't.
requiring you to have,
Well, the only
Anything.
difference that I can come up with so far is the fact that it is still not FDA approved.
Right.
You know, and
it's still under emergency.
There's a
use.
lot of
Yes.
FDA approved things
Which,
that don't work very well.
I believe President Biden actually spoke about having it approved just to allay
To-
those
to get
people's
that away.
fears, so that that employers could require it.
But at the
I
same,
would think teachers and first line workers should all be required.
well, and some organizations are requiring it now.
Right. Because
are.
obviously the kids can't get vaccinated. There's nothing we can do, but the fifth grade teacher can,
right.
and therefore at least they're not bringing that in.
Right.
But you mentioned, as far as populations and who should be vaccinated
Mhm.
first. I don't remember which country it was, but there was an interesting method another country did. They vaccinated all their workers first. They actually didn't go with the
Like
seniors.
the federal
The
workers,
government
Or
work.
the
Not
government?
just that.
just anybody who's
Walmart,
working.
Oh,
Kroger's,
really?
all
Well, that
of
makes sense.
Their logic was that they didn't want to shut down their economy, and
Mhm.
if they got their workers vaccinated first, they could keep working.
That would
and,
minimize a
And
lot
the
of that.
and the
public-
seniors and
people
older
facing the
people
public.
could just stay home.
Yeah.
And the workers would be able to safely
That's
bring
logical.
stuff to them.
So let's talk about this for a minute. We're gonna have a sort of a break here at the bottom of the hour. So we're gonna shift gears here at the half. But you and I spoke on the phone yesterday, and one of the things that we both kind of went into was there's one of the fears of this thing, or was being used as a lever to make people scared of it, I think, or something like that, was that this had been rushed, that it had been pushed forward too quickly. But some of the analogies we were talking about, for me, it was like when you think about how during wartime, our technology advances tenfold
Right.
because we wanted the A-bomb faster than the other guys had it. So in a couple of years, we had a working nuclear weapon because we wanted to end the war, because they figured just the threat of it would be enough to do. But look at all the resources that went
Mhm.
into that.
Right.
4 different countries. And
If you think about all of these research facilities that were doing different types of research across the country are now all working on the same project.
Well, and that's where I was going with it. So talk about that a little bit. Like when people say, well, it was too fast, it's not FDA approved, they didn't do all this testing. They did do the testing.
When somebody's going to do a clinical trial for something, there is a standard process they have to follow. They first have to approve. It has to have animal testing done first, then safety testing, and then efficacy testing. It always is done that way. And if I got this brand new medication that nobody knows is going to work or not, I'm going to have to come up with all the funding to get that testing done. And I'm going to have to be the one that convinces everyone that it's worth testing for safety and efficacy.
It's like they
And-
always say that first pill is $20 billion, but the
Right.
next pill is $6.
Yeah,
It's
you
gonna
gotta
take
make up
a
your
lot of
R&D money.
Time, money, and convincing for me to get you to fund this for me.
Right.
But if we're all working together, the funding was never an obstacle. Everybody stepped up to fund. The researchers and the brains and the scientists behind it were all there.
So many people involved in that.
But
Just-
even, on a smaller scale, look at the restaurants.
Mhm.
Up until last year, were restaurants doing things like delivering your food to your and drinks and
Everything is
everything?
adjusted.
Exactly.
Everything is adjusted. So
And
now,
everybody has been so innovative because there was something happened that caused everybody to think outside the box.
how quickly did we go to online school and Zoom meetings?
Well,
and
it was a necessity. Yeah, I mean, one of the networking groups we were in, 2 weeks.
Oh, I don't think
One
it was
took
that.
2 weeks, the other one took 6. I mean,
And they spun it
the
around.
only
and,
difference was how fast they decided it was important.
and I
think.
should point out
But
that
it was a larger group.
one of
but-
the organizations has 10,000 chapters
right.
and around the world. And to gather that much infrastructure for an electronic way of meeting, and there were weekly meetings, and
Right.
to be able to do that.
To get everyone off of in person and set up the Zoom concept. And
Yeah. So all of this goes back to, it wasn't that it was done rapidly.
No.
It was just a whole lot of resources at one time
Right.
that pushed it forward really
Well,
quickly.
think about your example, and if you had a life and death situation that you had the potential to make a fortune off of if you were able to come up with a viable solution to.
All
Not
these
to
guys are
mention-
going to work on it.
Not
for
to mention
sure.
the esteem and
The Nobel
and-
Prize you're probably going to get at
Yeah.
the end
Right.
of this thing. And you got to know people are thinking about that, because this
Right.
is a PR win for whoever did this first. And now we
Yeah.
got 3 people, 3 organizations who get to get, hey, we got it first, but somebody was, I don't know who was
So
first, but
when does humanity need and dollars all come together?
we got to the moon.
Well, the first vaccine, I believe, was 1796. I looked it up the other day.
The first actual vaccine ever
that
done.
was for
Smallpox,
smallpox. Yes, they
1796.
noticed that the milkmaids did not get cowpox,
Mhm.
and they developed the cowpox vaccine to work for smallpox.
The things that you learn on Old Nerd in the Gym.
Actually, that was an unrelated thing that the 15-year-old asked, so I don't know. It just happened to be useful this week.
Well, I think we're over our half mark, so we're going to take a break, and we've got some messages for you. But we'll be right back after that, and we're going to get in. We're going to get to know you a little bit more.
Okay.
She's looking a little worried.
Everyone always looks frightened of that.
I'm going to switch mics because this thing is not sounding.
Bugging you.
It is bugging.
I'm just gonna stay in the same
You're
place.
great.
I think we haven't. I'm trying to stay away from numbers and stuff because that's where I'll mess up.
Well, that's
You know.
why we'll look it up.
Yeah.
You want to do a number? Let me know.
Well, and there is an accompanying article that will have the accurate information in it. If we screw up in audio, people understand. It can always be deleted. What are you doing?
Well, this is how they do this on
That is weird. Screws in. Awkward. What makes you think you're gonna be any happier with that microphone? Prima donnas. You want your 8 green M&Ms as well?
This one doesn't have side.
Oh, there you go. Any other weird stuff on your writer,
Blue M&Ms.
Mr. Elvis? I need 400 blue M&Ms in my dressing room. Some poor PA has to pick through a bowl of M&Ms for 3 hours. Well, we could bring our mics here and plug them in.
No.
You have trust issues. Well, I'm learning about this little machine because it automatically turned off when you unplugged it. That was interesting. Yeah. This is my next purchase for ogling. This little box. Nonprofit.
Already in the whole
We were
60
actually
bucks for this episode.
Talking about making it a legitimate nonprofit. Remember?
We have tossed that around, but I don't need another business to run right now.
You did that in my XLR cord. That was smack you.
What?
You're spinning it over,
I'm
around and
trying to
around.
find words.
That's the next pin. There we go. You're on your mic
I
headphones
know.
cord now.
Oh, that's better.
Are you happier?
Wow.
What is better?
It's not so tinny. Well, it'll get up
I
from
don't know
there.
what this one is.
That's
Oh, that's if I want to plug an iPhone in. This is a fun little machine because we can do things like this. It has
Should we add that into something?
programmable buttons.
What are we going to say that is useful for that?
I'm not sure I have a lot of use for applause or sad trombone on this particular episode.
It has a sad trombone.
It has all kinds of things.
She does that when I do a bad joke.
Or wah wah.
This isn't.
Or rim shots. I got a rim shot.
You get rim shots too?
Yeah.
It's already set up.
Couldn't come up with any bad jokes.
That's good to know. We do that stuff in post-production because I never know if it's actually going to happen and she's going to have to think and push the button. So it's easier just to do it later. It's not funny. None of it's funny. Let's see.
Okay. Are you happier now?
Yes, thank you.
You sound weird to me.
That's because I'm not in front of it.
Okay. This is interesting. I'm learning so many things today.
You're our test dummy. Sorry.
Okay.
I don't think people like
You
being
get to
called
be
dummy.
first. Oh, I'm our
How
test
about
dummy
guinea
too.
pig?
Guinea pig?
pig's a little
What do they
nicer.
do? And do they still use rats? So yeah.
Apparently,
rat?
they've figured out how to fix a lot of the COVID vaccine stuff in mice. They just haven't figured out what else yet.
It's just,
So the mice are safe. Now, if we had to vaccinate all the mice, that would be a fortune, right?
Yes, it would.
I keep telling my son that if the ants ever figure out how to speak to one another and have a united goal, we're in real trouble. Because there's so many of them. The insects unite, we're all going to die.
okay. All right, I'm ready when you are. Whoa, hello. You don't have me really hot, like in the wrong way, do you?
I can't help how hot you are.
Levels.
No, you're actually lower than both of us.
Okay. Well, I'm
Because you
just gonna-
talk louder.
I do tend to talk a little louder.
He's used to not having a microphone.
It was weird at Annie Oakley having that.
I could tell that you were still trying to project, and then you're like, oh yeah,
I
now I'm
forgot I have
yelling.
a mic on me.
Now I'm yelling.
Okay.
Okay. Come on. So are we doing fun questions now?
Yeah, we'll do fun questions now.
Fun
We
questions.
have to lighten it up a little bit.
Okay.
This is very difficult stuff. So.
I need to get an actual legit count of our poll.
Oh,
I forgot about that
Yeah.
question.
I won't
Forget the most important question.
It is a pretty important question. You ready?
Yep.
Give me a count. Okay, we're back with Leann Poston, Dr. Leann Poston. I think it's important you earned it.
Thank you.
I don't say that to just anybody either. So we have some fun questions for you.
Okay.
So Old Nerd, one of the things we try to do is make sure that everybody's having a good time and you remember something about the person, because we're talking about some pretty heavy stuff today. So that's not unusual for us. We've had some pretty hard,
Get into some deep stuff
some
now
deep
and then.
discussions, but this is the hardest one. The vaccine is a really big problem. But so here's our first getting to know you question. Are you ready for this?
I am.
Yes.
Okay.
Fun question. Fun question.
Do we have one for that? I don't
Yes.
think we have one for
I do.
that. What's on your night table?
My phone, because I'm obsessive.
You're not supposed to do that,
I know. And
You mean I'm not supposed
Medical
to
specialists
not
say.
supposed to sleep with it tucked under my arm?
No, you're
No.
This is a don't do what I do. type of
Okay,
thing.
all right.
But I have clients that are global. And I confess, if I wake up at 3:00 in the morning, I'll check.
I do the same thing.
I was about to say, I have a feeling
Yeah.
that neither of us can say we have not checked email at 3 o'clock. in the
Anything
morning.
else besides your phone?
Oh,
Assuming a lamp of some kind, and
no, my husband designed this really cool thing to have the lamps like in hotel rooms that are actually attached to the bed.
oh,
frame.
nice.
So
Oh,
Don't have
don't
to
need that
fool with
taking up
that.
space or
nice.
anything.
He
No.
sounds handy.
Very
Yeah.
good. Very good. Okay, that's cool. What is on your pizza?
Well, I have 2 adult children that live with me, and we have a third child, and he's vegan. So,
So that makes it a little harder.
yeah.
So,
So
he gets his own pizza.
they get
So
yeah.
it's crust and
He and his wife get their pizza. Love them to death, but we won't share pizza with
got
them.
it. Yep.
My one son will not eat anything other than cheese. That's it. My daughter will go with pepperoni, but you get the point. I'm very
Yeah,
limited.
it's all
here.
over the place. So
Yeah.
so what's on yours? If you were to pick, what's on?
Oh, I
just
got to
for you?
share with somebody
Yeah.
because
so-
I'm
If you
always.
got your very own pizza without
Yeah, if you
anyone
didn't
else's
have to.
input,
Yeah,
what's
see,
your dream pizza?
you go to a
Okay.
hotel somewhere just to
You're
do
away
your
for the
thing.
weekend.
Just me, glass of wine, and a pizza. Huh?
Yeah,
Yeah.
what would be the
Mm.
pizza?
Ooh, and a bubble bath.
Now we've gone off the rails.
Now I know what I want for my birthday.
Well,
You're getting McDonald's as soon as this is over.
pepperoni and sausage, of course, make a great pizza.
Okay,
and
got it.
of course, cheese. 'Cause
Cheese.
There's no pizza
Do you
without
extra cheese or?
No, the regular amount of cheese is good. I like the extra sauce though. 'Cause
Okay.
I really
so
like
we're
the sauce.
saucing it up.
And then, I like onions, tomatoes, maybe some pineapple.
So if your family's listening
She
to
said the
this,
bad
something
word.
really nice to do. Wait, what? Did I just miss
You
that?
missed
It went
it.
right past me,
That
didn't
was the
it?
last thing.
The question is, are you team pineapple or not?
I listened to one of your previous podcasts and
Oh,
I
She knew we
you
were
knew
coming
it.
up
I
with the pineapple
threw that
question.
pineapple in at the very end
Just
just
for
to
me.
get you.
Oh.
She's lying
Sorry.
about the pineapple now.
So we have.
That's
what do
okay. Well, the lawyer wouldn't answer the question. He said, "Well, it depends on who I'm eating it with."
Yeah,
I'm
right.
like, he had the political answer
That was
for
a
the
very
best
safe
pineapple,
answer.
no pineapple.
So pineapple is a big contentious thing too. So apparently pineapple is a little like getting your vaccine. You got to. It's either one or the other. There's no middle. So it's like a big crazy thing. So are we like 70-30 now?
Yeah, I think
Roughly
the
70
no pineapples
no.
are still winning.
The no
but
pineapples are still winning.
the
So
pro pineapple seems to
they're
be
catching up a little.
They're having some sort of a resurgence.
Yeah.
But I might have messed up your poll though because you don't know what my motivation
That's
was
true.
for saying
Oh, that's true.
pineapple.
Well, and so you
Our
have.
sample has been corrupted.
She's contaminated our sample here, so our poll may not be accurate anymore.
Oh, but it does demonstrate what we were talking about though, as far as statistics.
Very much
you
so.
know?
She's using information gleaned from somewhere else to
So, and-
formulate an opinion.
And we're coming to that. That's actually a next topic, but I have one more question for you,
Sure.
which is, what is your favorite exercise or fitness activity? If you have a favorite.
Oh, I definitely do 10,000 steps every single day.
Really?
Every day.
Wow,
That's hard for a writer.
As a writer, yeah. Are you like?
if I don't go
what's the word?
make myself do it,
Dictating into a voice recorder
I
while
have
you're
before,
walking.
it wouldn't be first.
This-
See,
hard.
I like to listen to. I do a lot of courses.
Mhm.
I review courses for Coursera too.
Okay.
That's one of my jobs that I picked up over the time.
That
And
sounds
so
fun.
I get all kinds of interesting type of courses, and they pay me to do a certain amount of review. But when
You just get into it. Yeah.
and it's kind of
You're
like
like, next
oh,
week I'm learning Portuguese.
right. I got to listen to the rest of the course. So that's where
So you get your steps by just doing stuff like
Absolutely.
that. So, okay. So
do you walk
walking is
around
your,
in a circle or do you do this outside?
you have a treadmill? Do you,
Well, I
how do you
don't-
get your steps?
Yeah, I don't do my steps outside because I'm not that coordinated.
Okay.
You know,
You can relate.
but
There are things that will trip me up on the ground.
Like,
our house is nicely
ground.
designed with a big walkway that you can go around so that you could walk inside. And I have a treadmill
Oh,
downstairs.
okay.
There's a track inside.
There's a track inside.
That's what we need to do is put a rooftop track
So
in our studio.
yeah, in the studio,
Like
a
a
rooftop.
catwalk.
Well, you can walk up and
We
down
could build
the
a
attic
catwalk.
if you want
There you
to.
go.
Just walk back and forth in the attic.
I've done that too.
Do the same thing. It's a
When
big
I
I
worked
attic.
just finished saying I fall down on flat ground. You want me to do steep
Well, once you're up
stairs
there,
to
you're
an attic?
good.
And you get to the point where your feet know the direction. Because when I worked at Wright State, I used to close my door and pace, and I could get 6,000
Which is Wright
steps
State.
in right
Yeah, that's
there.
true.
Wright State, you can walk forever too. I mean,
I know.
between the tunnels.
It is
and
a
the,
very
But
So-
the cable
Sidewalk
to the
heavy
computer
campus
won't
there,
go
isn't
that
it?
Won't
far.
go that way. So just to let you know,
Does
we're-
Wright State have the underground tunnels
it
too?
does.
They do.
Yes,
Oh.
there's not a 2. They were first.
I just assume other cold weather places.
No,
have
it was
them.
bomb shelters.
Oh, okay.
That was the original.
I would
idea.
presume that University of Minnesota might have some underground.
Well, they probably
stuff,
do,
too.
but not for the same reasons. We
Yeah.
even had is the amphitheater still there? I don't
Outdoor
remember.
amphitheater.
Yeah.
It's just like off the one tunnel. There was this glass window, like you're in a fishbowl, and people sitting there studying, looking at you when you walk by.
That's creepy.
It was it was meant to do like outdoor classes and have a little show or whatever you wanted to do with it, but you can't really get. I don't remember a door. It's very
I'm
strange.
having
It's been a long
behind
time.
glass.
Visualizing it, yes.
It's been a lot. So Wright State University, I should tell everybody, started out as a. If you're not from the Dayton, Ohio area, it's most famous for its basketball here, but also that's named after the Wright brothers. If you can figure that out, you shouldn't be listening to this one because that's kind of Dayton. But the Miami University put in a Dayton campus in '67, and they decided eventually they spun it off and became Wright State. But it's probably best known that when I was going to school there, which was in the '80s, that we were pretty much already ADA. We were handicap accessible everywhere. Every ramps, tunnels, the whole deal. You could go anywhere. We had elevators in every building. It was just like a big deal at the time.
Wow.
So that was its claim to fame.
Mhm.
So let's see. So we're going to move on to another piece of this. And the next thing we're going to be talking about here is we mentioned it just a minute ago, is how the misinformation gets spread. And the misinformation is one of those things that, we have various levels of trust in the media, and there is journalism and there's entertainment. And I think that's blurred a lot today. As a journalist, one of my things I've always hated was watching a commentator or watching an anchor person comment on the story that they're reading to you, because it kind of smudges the lines a little bit.
You don't like when they talk about how cute the puppies were.
I really
in the
don't.
segment?
I want them to just be quiet and read the news. I mean, they're just reading it to me anyway. That's fine. But you would not have seen
They're
Mrna
not
or
supposed to
Cronkite.
have an opinion.
Mrna or Cronkite, if they were giving an opinion, they told you they were giving you their opinion right now. It would say editorial or something. Paul
Yeah, it usually
Harvey
had a preface at the beginning that says this is an op-ed.
Yeah,
piece.
there was a line, and it was fine for them to do that, but they made sure that, and you have to understand that the anchor person of a network television program is the managing editor. So their job is to decide what goes on that program, and their final decision is it, except for their bosses. We don't know how that works today. No, the producers don't say that.
Really?
The managing editor, it's like in a newspaper. The managing editor is the one who makes the final decision. And according to the way CBS has always done it, it's been that way. The problem with that is that today we have these blurred lines between entertainment and news. And news programs tend to be more entertainment than they are news anymore. And they're trying to add more stuff in. So in order to do that, there is the occasional sensationalizing of a story. Whether it's meant that way or not, it comes across that way to a certain group of population, where I can filter it out because I know it's happening. So I just you want the facts. And that's where part of this comes in, because we've been given mixed information from government, mixed information from news media, mixed information from healthcare professionals who will say, I work in healthcare, I'm not getting the vaccine, which that just really, I mean, how could you get that far? But you have to look at who that healthcare person is and what their position is too.
And what their motivation is.
Yes. So we have no idea what that motivation is.
Well, I mean, when in the past have we ever had things like monetization of YouTube videos for
Good point.
doctors, healthcare professionals?
Very good point.
Every healthcare professional can go on YouTube. And honestly, you have to stand out. And
Right.
you know as well as I do, standing out usually requires a little peripheral position there.
Punditing.
Yeah.
You
So-
have to make something about yourself that's a little bit flamboyant, or for
Well,
some
you're
reason
exaggerating,
makes you
or
different than the herd.
maybe exaggerating isn't the right word, but you're blowing it out of proportion. Whatever the thing is, or you're taking something again out of context, as we mentioned before, and you're using that one piece, and
Right.
it's gotten out of control.
Well, and you have the concept of people who are branding themselves, so they get off on this, tangent of I'm the brand, and I have to have a specific way of making myself more special, because they that way you would tune into them versus someone else. There's 10,000, however many thousands of YouTube channels out there.
Well,
Why watch you and not someone else?
and now anybody can publish information on the internet if they want
Right.
to. I mean,
And there's no, I tell our writers that I work with, if you bring me a source that says Wikipedia, you're fired, because that's just
There's
one of the
nobody
things.
checking and balancing that that's correct
I
information.
need to see, in the old days, back when I started in newspapers, you had to bring the editor 3 sources, and they had to be independent sources. So if you're not talking to the congressman or whatever, you can't read the report that NBC did and use that in your article. You had to go call the guy and find out what was going on. They don't do that anymore.
well, and sources is a really good point as far as this circumstance, because the preprints that have been out, and we have preprint servers now in the science field, and what those are journal articles that a person or people have reviewed, and they look okay, but they have not gone through the peer review
They weren't
process.
really vetted by.
Well, they haven't finished the peer review process, and you know that when they're on a preprint service, they haven't gone through that process. And the purpose is, if I find something really important out about COVID, everybody needs to know about it really quickly. We can't go through the entire process.
Right.
But you hear about papers being withdrawn, and the reason they're being withdrawn is because of this.
Some source issue, or
They're not completely
data's not
reviewed
been
or
reviewed
anything
right
yet.
or
And when
whatever.
it is completely reviewed and has finished the process, they've decided it's not adequate and it needs to be withdrawn.
So what is there I mean, I know we have AMA and things like that, but is there really a way? I mean, anybody can publish it. As you said a minute ago, some doctor who's independent, doesn't work for a healthcare system or something, can do whatever they want.
Right. So, and if you're asking, is there one place that you can go that you
There
can
really
be assured?
isn't, is there?
There is not.
So we talked about this earlier. If you have questions about this vaccine or this virus, start with your physician.
Right, because that's the person who knows you, and you know their motivation. You know, as a physician, a pediatrician for a group of children, my motivation is to keep them healthy, happy, alive,
Right.
etc.
It's
And that's
like a
my
loan shark. If you kill your patients, you don't have any work
Right.
anymore.
Well, that doesn't make well. It's a kind of a silly analogy, but it's effectively correct. And if you think about this too, this also goes back to the misinformation part of this goes back to conspiracy theorists. And I'm going to throw this out because one of the things that conspiracy theorists always think of, you know, if you're listening to this and you got your aluminum foil hat on, you're not going to like what I'm about to say. You're all loony because think about this for a second. The government is not going to want to do something because one of the things that I heard was it was just completely out there. They're going to give you this vaccine so that you get the virus and die. There goes your tax money.
Yeah.
And we're broke right now.
It's all
The
a
country-
big population control philosophy.
Well, no, it doesn't make sense because the government wants your tax money.
Oh,
If they kill half the population, there's a lot of money out of it. I mean, I'm just being very cynical about this, but this is kind of where those theories come into play that don't just even the basis of it doesn't make any sense. So what do you tell somebody who is refusing to be, I don't think I think there's a group of people you're not going to reach. It's just not going to
There's
happen.
going to be some tinfoil hat flat earthers.
There's always,
just
yeah,
not
you're
gonna-
going to have those people no matter what. But
Well, as long as they stay in their compound and they don't come out, I don't mind.
but the problem is they are coming out and they're
Yeah.
writing things like we're just talking about, and they're putting stuff on the internet. And it might be somebody with an advanced degree who still believes this nonsense. So they put some letters after their name, and all of a sudden people think they're credible.
Right.
They taught for 2 years at some school someplace, and now they're geniuses, right? So we take their word for it. What do you say to somebody? You know, if you had a parent that came into your office with a kid and they're old enough and I'm not going to give them a vaccine, what would you say to convince them?
Well, the first thing I think that people need to realize is science is a process. It is not an endpoint. And we have to work with the information that we're given. And I think a lot of the conspiracy theorists come about because information you're given now may contradict, or at least partially
It
contradict,
changes.
information that you were given before.
Sure.
Because more data is known and more information is known.
Right.
And so does it mean that when we were told, last year or the year, not to wear a mask or masks weren't useful or whatever, based on the information that was given at that time, it seemed to be true.
And then 5 minutes later,
Right.
everybody mask up.
Well, and the motivation at the time was, first of all, they said that it was to keep the masks for the healthcare providers because they were the ones in
Right.
direct
Because
contact
we
and
didn't
highest
have
risk.
That was about
Yeah.
numbers, though, right?
That
That
was
was
yeah.
inventory. Yeah.
that was preparing.
And then once they got to, okay, now you all can wear them, then it became a contradiction. Well, you said we couldn't have them. Now we can have them. How do we know they even work? So then they went in and did all the testing on the mask, and you've seen all these science studies that have shown droplets and droplets going through different compositions and materials and things like that in order to try to make the science more. But my point is, you can hear this and you can hear this and you can hear it from everybody, but you need to take that information and ask yourself, does it really make sense?
Right.
And who's telling me this?
Right.
And what is their motivation?
And motivation is a big piece of this because
Right.
because as we've talked about before, this has become incredibly politically motivated. And
It
in
is.
the midst of this, it became politically motivated.
And it's financially motivated.
Right.
I mean, because we were talking about YouTube just a second ago. I mean, you get so many subscribers to YouTube, you make more money.
Still
right?
trying to figure out how to do that. There's a 12-year-old making $40 million
You
a
have to
year.
start talking about how the earth is flat.
I'm not gonna do that. So if it's all these motivations kicking this sideways, so now effectively I posted something on Facebook earlier today, which basically said, you know what, if you had just done the stuff that they asked you to do a year ago, more than a year ago now, when this thing first started, instead of arguing about my rights, arguing about my political thing, whatever that was, there's a good potential a lot of this would not be happening now because it would have slowed it that much. It wouldn't have gotten rid of it for sure. There would have still been strains of this thing going on. But are we back to that? I mean, are we to the point again where we're having to start over in some ways because of the variants?
I don't think we're starting over. The problem with the Delta variant is that it is so much more infectious. Right. You're carrying thousands of viral particles in your nose and sinuses,
Mhm.
whether you're infected. And unfortunately, as we saw by the CDC report that was put out,
Yeah.
even if you're not infected.
And you're hauling it
Right.
around with you, whether you've got the
Exactly.
vaccine or not.
Didn't they say that you can carry the Delta variant in your nose, and
Mhm.
even if you're vaccinated, you can pass that on to other people?
Right.
That's correct. And
Yeah.
not even feel any symptoms or be sick from
Right.
it. And that's why they're asking you to reconsider going back to the mask, because if I happen to have, that virus going around and you were not vaccinated
Mhm.
and I wasn't wearing a mask there, I'm not protecting you as well as I could have been.
Right.
Now,
And-
is that just the nature of biology that the virus itself is trying to survive, so it's become more
Well,
virulent, I guess would be the
Virulent.
word?
Well, and I don't know that it's become more virulent, it's become more infectious.
Right.
Um,
that's
the-
about transmission.
Yeah.
Right. Infectious is how many people, because according to the CDC report, and I have not read the entire CDC report, so
Neither
that in
have any
mind.
of the government pundits who are talking
well,
about.
I would
What they were
imagine it's quite
saying
lengthy.
is that the original variant was as infectious as the common cold, which means that if I was coughing and sneezing with it, 2 people would be infected usually as an average.
Okay.
And that's how they figure out infectivity, is how many people are infected from each individual person that's spreading.
Okay.
Now they're saying that the Delta variant is as infectious as the chickenpox virus. So that's more like 6 people.
60 people
Yeah.
is what I saw in this.
So that's at
Right.
least 3 times.
Exactly. Which means it's going to spread a lot quicker.
And then you're in a Wrigley's spearmint gum commercial, which was the one that told 2 people and they told 2 people. And
Well,
they
yeah,
told
it's
people.
and
I don't remember the product. I
this-
always
this
remember
is
the
part of the
commercial.
problem, and that's the thing, is getting people to understand that, because they think they, meaning the people that still are resisting to this information, are still saying things like, there is no bug. This is something the government made up, and this new one is another way to keep us down and keep us from having our businesses open and all that stuff. And I keep going back to that. It's hard to feel sorry for people.
I don't understand what the government's
Well, listen,
motivation for messing
there
with the
isn't.
economy
That's my
would
point.
be. So where's your argument?
The
there?
last thing anybody wanted to do at the government level, whether it's federal, state, local, whatever, was shut anything down,
Right.
because it brings everything to a halt. And we're still not recovered from that.
And the government is who's been, trying to help people get back open. So it doesn't make any sense that they
Well,
would
I
decide
think,
against it.
And taking, again, without spinning this off into a political discussion, but the idea that you had a federal government in conflict with the state and local governments for a long time.
Mhm.
One's putting out one bit of information, one's putting out another, still another coming from another location. What are you supposed to believe? I mean, and that's no matter what your political motivation is. Are you just going along with the party, or do you try to break down the science and actually go?
Well, my advice to you would be, first of all, think about what do you need to know in order to make your decision. Okay. Everything in life is risk versus benefits, right?
Always.
You brought up the fact that if we had followed every recommendation a year ago, this might not have happened. Maybe, maybe not.
Right.
Just like, the person that's about to get hit by a car an hour from now, if they hadn't gone on that errand, they wouldn't have been hit by the
It's
car.
all cause and effect.
Exactly. We don't know what's going to happen. So as far as risk versus benefits, you want to weigh your risk and benefits, and you have to figure out what your risk is. So think about what you need to know. You need to know what your vaccine is made of. All right. So you need to talk to somebody and find out and get rid of any misconceptions there.
Somebody you trust,
Right.
who is an expert at this in some fashion.
Right. So if you're worried that you're going to get sick from the vaccine, you need to understand what a live virus vaccine is,
Right.
and that this is not. If you're worried that it's going to incorporate into your DNA, you need to know that this is not DNA. If you're worried that it's going to code for COVID, the SARS-CoV-2 virus inside of your cells and make you, do something to you, you need to understand that it's a genetic sequence for the spike protein, not all of it. So first, you got to know what it means. Secondly, you need to know what SARS-CoV-2, the COVID virus, can do to you. And that's another risk versus benefits. If you're older, your risk is higher. If you have chronic disease, your risk is higher. If you have
Immune suppressed,
Immune-suppressed.
any number of
right
variants.
So look at your chronic diseases, your family chronic diseases, and find out what your risks are. Then weigh that versus your benefits. What is your risk of the vaccine? What could possibly happen to you? We've heard some of the small circumstances that have occurred, like the myocarditis as a result of the vaccine in a small
That's the
population.
inflammation in the heart.
Correct. And what is your risk of that? Look and see how many how many people that has actually happened to, what age group it happened to, was there any long lasting effects from it?
Mhm.
Then take that risk and compare it to the disease. How often does myocarditis happen if you have COVID infection? You may be surprised to see
It's much higher.
Oh, it's much, much
Yeah.
higher. How long does the COVID virus cause you, the brain fog and chronic loss of smell and, all the other things that can happen? So just gather that information for yourself and even make a table if you have to. These are my
Pluses and
risks.
minuses.
These
Well,
are
just
my
like any other
benefits.
decision, pros and
Mhm.
cons of whether or not I decide to buy a new car
But
or anything else in your life.
I still have this, and all that is perfect, and I think that's what people should do. From my perspective, I feel like, and you can't see this unless you're watching the video here, but I've got my mask in my
Mhm.
pocket because
Mine too.
I didn't know if they were going to start doing that
Right.
or how many people would be here. It's pretty empty, so I'm not that worried.
Well, and I did read something about just for your own safety, a lot of people are wearing masks again in
Mhm.
like a Walmart
Well,
or someplace where you're going to be around a lot of people.
Well, my question is, what exactly does this little piece of fabric harm me?
Right.
It
How
doesn't.
can it harm me to
How-
do this?
How hard is it if it's not?
It's not a big
major,
deal. And when you think about the number of
Inconvenience.
risks, and I pointed this out, you were talking about the risk versus reward, and you think about the number of risks, the majority of people that I see in my circle, and this is just my perspective, people on social media or people that I know, the majority of people who are resistant to this because they're afraid of it,
Mhm.
they're afraid of the risk, tend to be smokers or drinkers. They have a lot of tattoos, which to me is an incredible risk because, you don't know what that guy's been sterilized, if he's doing his stuff right or whatever. All of these risky behaviors that are in there. And yet this makes them want to say no. And they would complain about putting a mask on. I have a problem with that because I feel like that puts so
you're already
many.
engaging in so many other risks.
You are,
things,
and
it
you-
doesn't make any sense.
And you're only doing this, you're not
Well,
doing this because of some
think
other
there's-
reason.
And
That's
you
not-
got to remember too that there's a couple biases going on here too.
Yes.
Right.
First of all, there's the recency bias. Have you ever bought a red car and noticed that everybody else has got a red car all of a sudden because you just bought one?
Because you're noticing that.
Right.
Right.
And
That's
you're
true.
seeing this information online and saying, "Oh, this happens, this happens, this."
So they're just
happens."
grabbing it all and
and seeing it all and thinking, but
Yeah.
there hasn't been much in the news lately about alcohol and smoking and
Right.
that risk. And they're just seeing that.
and look at the
Any
numbers
good
of
computer algorithm will keep popping up crazy
What you
articles
want,
because you
yeah.
looked at a crazy article.
and that's the other thing too, because I think because more people are getting information from social media has really caused a problem with this
Mhm.
because there's no good information there. If you're listening to this, yes, our old nerd is on social media, but we
Right.
don't disperse other people's information.
Well, we're not trying to convince
I'm
anybody.
not trying to
of
convince
anything.
anybody of anything.
We don't get extra,
We get nothing.
subscribers
This
by
makes nothing.
you getting a vaccine.
And that's but Facebook and Instagram and all those places, they have algorithm. Now they're supposed to have curtailed that sort of stuff, and you do have complete control over your feed. But if
Mhm.
nobody's going to bother to change that, you're going to be constantly being, bombarded with this stuff because
Right.
you clicked on that one article. Well, now it
Mhm.
knows you like those articles.
Well, as far as your mask, think about all the
Here's my
people
mask.
in Asia
There it is.
that wear masks all the time.
Yeah.
in order to not get influenza
And I
not
have
get
seen that
colds.
at
It's
Disney
influenza,
World
it's
and
pollution,
Disney
it's
World
just
and other places too that
Right.
you will see that people from
the-
other countries,
The foreign travelers will
Asian
all wear 'em.
especially, they will wear
There's,
them
there's a
everywhere.
reason they're doing it.
And it's not that big a deal.
Okay, how would you feel? and I'm gonna talk to the
With my
listening.
hand.
I'm going to talk to let's put your wah into that one. I'll talk to the listening audience as well. How would any of you feel if you were awake at the time of going into a surgical procedure and you weren't anesthetized yet? You were going, let's say your appendix is coming out or something minor. You're going in and you're awake when you go in. The doctors and nurses come in. None of them is gowned. None of them is wearing a mask. None of them is wearing gloves. What would you do? I'd be off that table in a shot. It'd be all like, really? Because they're not keeping it, because you
Was
glove
this
after
the-
you wash, right?
They're
So
putting you at risk.
they're putting me at risk.
1905 when we used to tell the surgery wouldn't kill you, but the infection
The
afterward.
infection
would,
afterward.
yes.
But
Right.
what about walking into your doctor's office and they don't
Mhm.
wash their hands?
It just
Yes.
drives me crazy.
See,
it
they've
never
increased
stops.
your risk.
I'm
Everybody's
curious,
doing it.
does anybody have any of the information about how much the flu was down this past winter
There was something
because
about
we
that.
were all washing our hands and cleaning more.
Yes.
It's markedly down.
Yeah.
And that's the reason.
Because of that.
Because of
Which
the
we should do anyway.
well,
There's the question. Why weren't we doing all this stuff?
That's what he always says. Why weren't they already cleaning the restaurant before?
well, let me ask you this. Why are you not getting up every 15 minutes when you're writing?
I generally do.
Do you?
But I had to learn that.
Yeah.
Right.
It's not something I do it automatically.
He's
I had to
also a little
learn
bit-
it.
You're
And-
also wired a bit twitchy.
I am a little twitchy.
And see, that's the point. It takes conscious effort
You have to
Right.
do
to
it.
do it
Mhm.
and make it a habit. And that takes
But
time.
does it take conscious effort to teach the kids to wash their hands after they go to the bathroom? Because
quicker not to.
Yeah.
I mean, if you think about it,
we will have
you
to
can't see
freeze
the
your
face
on
just
that.
now.
They'll be able
obviously
to
I'm
on
being
video.
devil's advocate here because I am totally in
Like,
makes
favor
no
of
we're
sense,
washing.
sorry,
right?
man.
But
Today on
So
Old
which is
Nerd, a
better?
doctor
Hand
suggests not washing your
sanitizer or
hands.
actually washing your hands?
I don't care which one you do, as long as you
At
do
least
something.
one.
I am not suggesting that. So,
What's the old joke of the one military guys that washes his hands after the other one doesn't? And he says, well, in my branch of the military, they taught us not to pee on our hands.
oh gosh.
And now we've gone. Go ahead with what you were going to say, because
No,
that's
I'm
off the rails.
Thinking,
Still wash your
yeah,
hands.
more practically. Have you ever been in a school like I have?
Oh yes,
Oh, yeah.
and
And
that's
how much time does those
Unfortunately.
children get? How many, do they get to go to the restroom and stuff? Do they get in trouble if they don't get back to the classroom in time? How
Yeah,
many
we had
sinks
something
are
like
there?
7 minutes between classes, and the building was 3 stories. So if you had to go from
any
the first
water
floor to
across
the third
your
floor,
hand at all is better than nothing.
Right. And in an ideal world,
yes.
everybody would be washing your hands. And I am totally against
So
for
now
that.
we've got
But I also want to bring up that that's the same thing with the vaccine. If you've got a mother who has 4 children, who has to get to work every day, who can't, is hearing, oh, the vaccine can cause me to have a fever and muscle aches for 3
so
days
now you're
afterwards.
concerned about being sick afterwards.
Exactly. I mean, we have to be cognizant of the fact that our risk and benefits may not be the same as someone else's.
Right.
And if we want to get everyone vaccinated, we have to figure out what it is that's really the risk that they're concerned about and the obstacles that they're facing and work on those.
We have to also be aware and stay away from enacting what I call more babysitting laws. And what to me, that is, they're common sense things that people should be doing anyway that really don't affect a lot of people. It's kind of like the wearing the helmet on a motorcycle thing to me. It's like, if you're just as dead, whether you hit my car or somebody else's, I'm fine. So if you're not going to wear a motorcycle helmet, that's fine. That's up to you, I guess. But
then if they get in, they have a closed head injury, and now I'm paying for their benefits
exactly,
because
that's where the
they were
problem
dumb
comes
enough
in.
to get hurt.
So this person is
That affects me.
our theoretical mom, who's single mom, got 3 kids. They're trying to deal with all this stuff. They have to work. They have to do all this stuff. At what point does it become our problem?
Well, I think that the thing that we want to be careful of is not to put all people who have not been vaccinated in the same bucket.
Correct. And I think that's happening a lot too.
And recognize that there are different reasons for different people. And if we can try to help out our neighbor to, if you're a neighbor to that single mom with 3 children and you would like to help, you can
make sure that they know they got coverage if they have to get it.
exactly.
Yeah.
Let her know if you end up having a fever, any muscle aches or anything, let me know. I'll be
There was a time not that long ago in some neighborhoods are still like this, where you would do things for your neighbor and you knew what was going on. I haven't even met my neighbors, and I've been there almost a year. Of course, there is a large amount of bushes between my house and theirs, and I
That's
would
a
have to
barrier.
walk out on a
Too much.
very
You'd
busy
have to
street
cut
to
a
get
hole.
to their house, but
So
I could have gone over and said hello at any point.
So to just kind of narrow some of this stuff down, so that some of the mythology surrounding this thing kind of goes into that. Is this dichotomy between, it's probably not just 2, but there's probably a lot of variations of why people aren't getting the vaccine.
That's correct.
There's politics, there's personal feelings, there's religion, there's whatever these things are. So if you think about when someone comes up, like one of the most popular ones that I'm hearing that people are not letting their 12-year-old and up get vaccinated for, they're not letting their daughters get vaccinated for because they say it will make them infertile, which has already been debunked.
It has. And both the American College of Obstetricians and Gynecology and I'm blanking on the other major obstetrician and gynecology organization, both of them are in full support of getting the COVID vaccine.
So that's just one example. So there are all these things that people are afraid of. And as we've discussed, the best thing to do is start with your doctor, but then look at the resources, as we mentioned. CDC is a great place to start. Maybe your own hospital system has some information that they're putting out wherever your doctor is through. They may have some information that might be a good one. But steer clear, to me, and this is me speaking as a journalist, steer clear of news sources, no matter how viable they are. That's not where your information should come from on this.
That's correct. You don't know what their references are, and a lot, and that's another thing too. You mentioned, you won't accept something unless it has 3 solid references.
Right. And a lot of them don't have anything.
Exactly. As a consumer, if you're reading something, if it's not referenced, just move on past it, because it's not.
And if you see something and you're confused, you want to look up another resource to see if it agrees or disagrees with it.
And do Google's great about using the same word searches to find multiple different sources for something. So if you don't have that, DuckDuckGo is also a good one for that, because it's not tracking you, so you're not going to get. It's only good for me. The idea is that it's not keeping those cookies in there and just keeping your history.
I found out that you get better airline flights if you use a browser you haven't used before, because it's not saving all those temporary times.
I have too. Yeah,
somebody told me that recently. Yeah.
So next episode is about travel.
Airline flights.
Apparently, airline flights. So we're coming down to the end here. We're running a little long on purpose. That's okay. This is an important piece. Is there anything you would like to say as a physician, as an educator, that might help people who are standing on the fence?
Yeah. I think the most effective thing is to weigh your risks and benefits. You had mentioned yesterday, as far as people being concerned about school, weigh your risk and benefits of sending your children to school. Look at how prevalent COVID is in the school. What is your school actively doing to protect children? What are the risks of your child not going to school? How effective was online schooling for your children over the last year? Are you concerned about depression, suicide, any of those kind of things? Do you feel like your child actually kept up over the last year with their academics compared to previous years? That's that. You mentioned as far as the woman and choosing not to get vaccinated and infertility. What does COVID do to a pregnant woman? You don't look at just one side of the risk versus benefit. You got to look at both sides. If you're not going to get vaccinated, your risk of getting COVID increases. If your risk of COVID increases, what does that mean for you?
Yeah, because there are a lot of long-lasting effects that people are finding out after you are
which we didn't know until now, because it wasn't prominent,
and that's going to have a lot of implications for our jobs, economics, everything in the future. And there is long flu also. I mean, there are people who get brain fog and long-term symptoms from influenza.
And what we're talking about long flu is where the symptoms and the repercussions of the flu lasting longer, and the effects are lasting longer.
So this isn't something that's unique to COVID, but we have so many people with COVID right now, and who are recovering from COVID, and we have and to be able to see it all happening, that's a huge risk.
Well, and this is a massive. I imagine the researchers are just not jumping for joy, but very excited about the amount of data that they can collect on an active virus that we haven't had, since the flu first came around. I think we haven't had something to study like this.
Exactly. And it isn't, and the information will come out there, and that information will be used for years into the future to hopefully prevent other epidemics. And there are going to be other ones. There's going to be other pandemics, but maybe we can react differently because of what we've learned this time.
Every 100 years or so, it wipes out a big chunk of the population. And
but for you, me, and everyone else, what can we do? Wash our hands all the time. I know
I'm obsessive about it.
I know it takes. I am too, and I know it takes a couple extra seconds. But what's your priorities? And the risks versus benefits of not washing your hands.
Yeah.
And teachers out there, give your kids a couple extra minutes to let them wash their hands.
When I've heard people say, I'm good with the fact that we don't shake hands anymore, because I don't know why we were doing it before.
I don't really like
we didn't really need to.
I never really was a big handshaker in the first place. So it was kind of a relief in a way.
Right. And maintain your social distance when possible. I mean, if it's grandma, back to risk versus benefits.
Give grandma a mask.
And a hug.
Give grandma a mask and a hug.
Because
the risk, t-shirt.
Well, and the risk is high that grandma, may not be able to receive your hug in the future.
So
But maybe don't go to a parade and wear a t-shirt that says free hugs, because then you're hugging people you don't know.
You know,
Exactly.
I'm not going to go to a parade and give away anything. They're going to have to pay for it. So I'm
You
too
never give
broke.
away anything.
I don't give anything away. So, and the other part, I'm thinking about, there's a great campaign in there somewhere, a great ad campaign about give grandma a hug, and it's a mask.
Right.
And so if anybody's listening, if the CDC wants that, they're going to have to pay
mask
me.
and hug thing.
It's a mask and hug.
Together.
Yeah, you give a mask, and it's got a hug thing, like a little heart on it or something.
Like a bear with a hug.
Exactly. Right. So we've
And
got
make
a whole
all your
thing.
decisions that
There
way.
you go.
You brought up going into restaurants.
Right.
Yeah.
If you're a family that sitting together and dining in a restaurant is a high priority for you, that's the only time you connect, things like that, the benefits are greater than just somebody who is running in there to pick up food.
Here
Well, and
lately,
you have
it's
the
been,
option of sitting outside if you want to lower your
Absolutely.
risk a little bit. Of course, you might get some secondhand smoke. but
so I should point
a
out,
different
well,
issue.
even most places have banned smoking even outside now
Have they?
for the same reasons.
Wow.
Because they have to seat people outside. And if they have a no smoking policy indoors, they have to be able to seat people out there because of whatever. Then during the pandemic, they made that non-smoking as well. And you have to step outside of their space.
And in the
Yeah.
end, hopefully a lot of these habits will last.
Right.
You know,
Yeah.
we'll be more conscious of wearing masks when we're sick, especially.
Yeah.
And this is,
Washing our hands.
that's why I asked
maintaining
before,
distance.
when you're seeing the places clean so much,
Yeah.
Mhm.
why aren't we doing that already?
Right.
And I've noticed like YMCAs, things like that, like our particular Y
Mhm.
has stopped the obsessive cleaning,
Yeah.
which worries me a little.
Because it costs money.
It does cost
Well,
money,
and
but
they've
it's
taken down the barriers and stuff in some places.
There's no
the
check-ins.
their return on investment is high if you won't come
Right.
because they're not
Exactly.
cleaning.
That's what doesn't make sense.
But if you're
I
back to
spend a lot of
coming-
money there.
Right,
Yeah.
but if you're back to coming again,
That was new. What did you break?
that's
Oh, it's
probably
Uh-oh.
why.
an alarm.
We've got a watch
I'm
going
like,
off.
my phone doesn't do any noise like that.
Well,
I
with
like
that
it,
note,
though.
on
The
that note,
aliens have now arrived. We're being taken.
so clearly
Episode over.
we could fill a couple of episodes with this because this
Right.
is such a big deal. And around here we're in the midst of fair season, county fair season. Our local county fair just started yesterday, and our county is being hit hard with variant and just COVID in general. And I'm concerned that after the fair is over, because there's
Yeah.
there is absolutely, looking at the videos from there yesterday, that the news was like passing the
Nobody's
camera
doing
across.
anything.
Nobody's doing anything. They're crammed in there like sardines. And
And
all
they
I
still
can
have the
think of,
rides and everything.
yeah, everything's there. It's all open and
Wow.
running. So I'm concerned that with people having been so lackadaisical about this for the
Mhm.
last several months, that's one of the reasons it's caught up. But now with the variant spreading so quickly, now we're getting even more of this stuff. So from our perspective here, I think we're done for today for this episode. But I wanted to
I would
just
say the biggest takeaway is inform yourself and
From the
check the
proper
references
sources. Yes.
of the sources of your information to make sure that you're getting accurate
And
information,
it might seem-
not from one place.
And it might seem like we're being redundant about this and that we've said it over and over here, but
Yeah.
I think it's worth saying over and over again. Talk to your doctor,
Mhm.
Get your resources, make a checks and balances
Yeah,
list.
the risk versus benefits. I
Yeah,
think is
see if
probably the
that's-
best advice.
The best thing. And Leann, I want to thank you for coming and spending some time with
Thank
us
you.
today. This is really
you, yeah.
important. I think this is probably the most important one we've done for probably a year. And I think I hope
Since water.
since water. One of our first episodes was about water. And it was a big deal. So
Drinking water.
drink
not-
plenty of water.
not
As a matter of fact, that will
plenty of
help
water.
you stay healthier too. So
Yes,
it's all part of
absolutely.
this. Continue your exercise, social distance, steer clear of, if you know that there are pockets of areas that have been
Mhm.
hit hard, stay away from them if you can. Wear your own mask.
Yeah.
If you're for your own good, if not anybody
Well,
else's.
all the things that
And
we
even
teach
though you
people.
were joking before,
Yeah.
wash your hands.
Wash
Yes.
your hands, please. Wash
all
your
the
hands.
things that we teach kindergarten kids. Wash
Yeah.
your hands.
Right.
Cover your coughs and sneezes.
Well, that's what they said. Everything you need to know, you learn in kindergarten.
You
That's
did,
right.
and nobody's using it.
Except for the sharing thing. Don't do the sharing thing. like
Don't
in
share
kindergarten.
anything right now. It's okay. People will be all right with that. Everybody have their own individual containers.
Yeah.
It's going to be fine. Which we probably should have been doing in the first place.
Yes.
But so with that, we will call it a day. Again, thank you, Leann, for stopping
I
by.
almost said do your business well. That's, the wrong
That's a whole
podcast.
different podcast.
Well,
Yeah.
I've forgotten
So
I've forgotten our thing.
on
Get
behalf
up and get out there. That's it.
on behalf of Julie Barth, who's our producer and editor for this episode, my name is Gery Deer, and we will see you next time on Old Nerd and Gym Fitness Podcast. Now say it.
Get up and get out there. I feel like I should say get up and wash your hands.
Get up and wash your
get out
hands.
there doesn't sound really good right now.
We'll see you next time.
Thank you for listening to Old Nerd in the Gym Fitness Podcast. Our program is produced, engineered, and edited by Julie Barth and directed by Gery Deer. To learn more about how you can be a guest or sponsor on Old Nerd in the Gym Fitness Podcast, contact producer Julie Barth by email at oldnerdfitness@gmail.com. This program is copyright 2021, Old Nerd in the Gym Fitness LLC, and GLD Enterprises Communications Limited. All rights reserved.